live.
We are.
Oh, I should pull.
I'm starting Facebook. Rolling the intro.
It's good to have an intro. Sometimes you're like, yeah, it says we're live.
It says we're live. My phone just buzzed. So.
Yep, we're live. You can
Intro.
hear it.
It's real choppy. We gotta get that looked at. We should call our nice internet friend back out.
We should. Either that or we'll just hire a tech guy.
And we're here.
All right. Hey, this is Friday, and this is Uneducated, where you don't have to be educated to think rationally and logically about the scriptures and things that are going on in everyday life. So, I'm Brian, and
I'm a Matt.
And we're here to throw some things your way today and get you to think. I was just talking to some guys a couple weeks ago, and we were having Bible study, and I told them, I said, a lot of times people think that men are just, we just kind of do stuff and we don't think about stuff. But God created us to think.
Well, that is, the first is true.
Well,
we do things that we don't think about.
Yeah, kind of maybe our fallen nature causes us just to, and do that kind of stuff.
I would say that's why we are where we are.
Yeah. Okay. However, I think getting us back to how we were created in the image of God, we are supposed to be thinkers.
Right.
Yeah.
So, or wise.
At least wise.
We should try and be wise.
Yeah. I would think so.
Because, Karl Marx was a thinker.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he was wise.
Correct.
Okay. Some would say maybe. Not us.
Not me.
Yeah. Have you read, or are you planning on reading the Marx and the Devil, that new book that's out? I think it's called Marx. Yeah, isn't it called Marx and the Devil?
Yeah, it's the Devil and Karl Marx or something.
The Devil and Karl Marx.
I feel like that book is short and been so overly promoted this week. I've read it.
Well, yeah, kind of like
it's kind of like
White Fragility.
He gave away all the good stuff.
Yeah, that's the way White Fragility. I was asked to read it, and by the time I looked it up and saw the different videos on it,
I've done this.
I know exactly what she's saying.
Well, that's how shallow that topic is.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you, like, if I teach you the concept of an integral, you still know nothing about calculus.
Right.
But if I go through the high points of White Fragility, that unless America is destroyed, white people are plowed asunder, and black people be allowed to, and the minorities be allowed to remake this country as they wish, as long as it's Marxist. Mm-hmm. You've read White Fragility.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. If I say, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, who would believe, on him, yada yada. You know the deal.
You sound like Biden now all of a sudden.
But you haven't read I did that on purpose. Because I ran out of gas. But that is what he does.
Yeah.
But you haven't read the Bible. That doesn't tell you anything about the Bible.
Right.
You know? So.
You know who I'm talking about. That guy up there.
That's why I said, you know the deal. You know the deal. Listen, I only caught the first part of it at football games.
Oh, yeah,
They would write, for God so loved the world. Mm-hmm. That's the only part I know.
Yeah.
For all I know, that is John 3:16.
Yeah, John 3. For God so loved the world, just do whatever you want. It'll all work out.
You know the deal.
Yeah.
You know the deal.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I don't know if you heard this, but John MacArthur and Andy Stanley are having a little bit of a spat. Have you
I've
seen
been
that?
trying to keep up with that, and I end up getting sucked into Tucker Nightly because I always hear that's amazing, and then I forget to go back and look at the Andy Stanley. Give me a run through, because this isn't the first time. Like, I think that Todd Friel really called Andy Stanley the carpet not that long ago. Mm-hmm. And so what's happening now?
So John MacArthur, Ministry Grace to You, he's been a pastor for, 175 years over there at Grace to You. Long time.
Long time.
And he has really been taking some heat because he shut down when they mandated and asked them to shut down when they didn't know what was going on with the virus. And then they began to have services, and people just started showing back up at his church. And so then the more they learned and understand about the virus, they were like, well, this is, there's no reason for us to be panicked and do this.
Did you notice that video had been taken down? I had heard from some people that video had been taken down.
Oh, no.
When John MacArthur made that video, he said those things.
Yeah.
Like, we've been coming here and we've all noticed that we're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it had been taken down. But so, long story short, he's been going through litigation and things, trying to stay open, and so the state's fighting him and all that stuff out in California. And so he's been a real big proponent on, we have to, the Bible tells us that we are not to forsake in Hebrews, that we're not to forsake the gathering of God's people together, that we should be gathering together. Andy Stanley is the pastor of North Point Church. Also, his dad is Charles Stanley. Some of the older people might remember Charles Stanley being on all the time.
I guess I never put that together.
Yeah, so that's his dad. And so Andy Stanley has a very large church with multiple campuses in Atlanta, Georgia, called North Point. So Andy has been known recently in the last couple years to make some statements concerning the Old Testament and the not so much need for the Old Testament. Old Testament's kind of old, so we don't really need to talk about it much. We don't need to deal with that. We're just stick with the New Testament. And that's a bad road to go down for anybody that wants to study the Scriptures, because the New Testament authors, that's where they got their information from, was the Old Testament. They knew the Old Testament, they read it, they meditated on it, and much of what they spoke of in the New Testament was a reflection of what was happening in the Old Testament. So MacArthur was kind of on him about that before, but now just recently, Andy Stanley came out and had a video where he said,
we're online, we don't need to come in.
Well, yeah, and then he said, listen, there are churches out that are going, hey, the church, it's commanded that the church gather. It's commanded that the church gather. It's commanded that the church gather. And so he's repeating this. And then he makes this almost, I don't know, it kind of seemed arrogant, but he makes this little hand gesture, bring the camera closer to me. And then when the camera doesn't really get close, but he's like this, and he goes, the Bible never commands us to meet together. And then that was it. That was it. So MacArthur then, in an interview, MacArthur is asked about that, and MacArthur goes, oh, this is laughable. He goes, anybody that knows the Scriptures knows that the Scriptures tell us we're supposed to gather together. Now, I can see in one sense, if Andy Stanley would have maybe clarified himself, depending on what he was saying, and maybe that was taken out of context, but the church can technically still meet in a digital world, so you would have to then define, John or Andy, what does it mean? What does the Bible mean when it says meet? John MacArthur would say, well, they were breaking bread together, they were meeting in the synagogues, they were doing all those, they were praying together, so they had to be in close proximity when they did that. However, the question would be, when the Bible says gather together, does that mean we can still gather?
Now?
Yeah. So I think if Andy, so that could have been taken out of context. So that's the most I've seen of it. And a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of times when people jump on these things, sometimes they are taken out of context. So we'll have to see what happens in the near future with Andy's response to John MacArthur and all that stuff.
It's good. I like some good inter-church arguments. It's great.
It is fun. Yeah,
it's
fun to watch the people who are supposed to be united divide themselves over stupid stuff.
Right.
But let's face it, it happens sometimes. The second thing is this. Last week we talked about Black Lives Matter and the cultish, spiritual, ancestral worship stuff that the leaders, particularly Patrice Cullors is one of the leaders, that she spoke in an interview saying that when they go out on the streets, they are literally conjuring up the spirits of the dead people to animate themselves to go out and do what they do. And so this is ancestral worship. It goes back to roots in African beliefs of that kind of stuff. So we talked about that last week, and then you pulled up and sent me a video that Glenn Beck is now all over this.
Right.
And then a media outlet that I watch, Skywatch News, with Tom Horn and those kind of guys, they've been all over it actually before. That's the first place I heard of it, and then I began to investigate it. But they had a gentleman on there talking about it as well. So I think it's probably out. It might not be out there in the mainstream media, but it should be out there in some of these outlets that there is demonic activity and worship going on in the streets now. It's not just protest when it comes to Black Lives Matter. This is actually, they've said it specifically in interviews, that they are literally summoning demons.
Yeah.
Or spirits.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so this is also the vein that Glenn Beck has been on with this. We talked about the devil and Karl Marx, or Karl Marx and the devil, and some of the things, like I said, they pretty much gave you the book in the interviews that I've watched with this guy now. Of he basically was a worshiper of Satan.
Right, Marx. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a Christian, right, for a while. Then he turned atheist, and then
he was from a Christian family.
Correct. Right.
And he lived in a very Christian part of Germany. That's where he was born.
Yeah.
And very young age turned away from the faith and became a foul, horrible person. If you read the book,
right,
which I would tend to believe it. But one of the things that was funny, and one of the main arguments that the socialists, Marxists, Leninists, communists, whatever is not capitalism and freedomists, one of the things that he said about Karl Marx was he was not a money guy. What would he call that? An economist.
Okay.
He's like his theory, his economic theory is laughable.
Oh.
At best, he's not a theologian, but a philosopher. At best, Karl Marx is a philosopher. This is his philosophy, as horrible and astounding and shocking and satanic as it is. It's his philosophy.
Right.
And he had to have an economic component if he wanted to have a way of life. He wanted to make a way of life.
Right.
And it basically boils down to no private property. You own nothing. But, one of his favorite things to say was everything must be destroyed.
Yeah. It's so.
Did you hear that part?
I've heard that. Yeah.
It's from a Faust written book about what demon was it?
Wormwood?
No, it begins with an M. Mephistopheles.
That was the demon's name?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so from this book Mephistopheles about this particular demon.
This was a play that he wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
Okay, it was a play.
Yeah. Because didn't you say
Faust was a playwright?
Because didn't you say that was the play in Tombstone?
It is the play in Tombstone. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, that was the. I don't know if that's where the Faustian agreement, part. I don't know if it's in that play that's. I think that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
Where you make a deal with the devil.
Gotcha.
You sell your soul to the devil.
Okay.
But either way, he was into all of that.
Right. So when I think about this, I think about Karl Marx and socialism, which has been around for a long time. People have always tried to. There's proponents of that.
Late 1800s. Mid to late 1800s.
And you got Malcolm X that tried to bring it all back. I think back in the day, right? Was Malcolm X a big Marxist guy? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
But anyway, so you've got this thing, and it tends to come into the political area, and then Black Lives Matters as an organization now in the political scene. But let's face it, if we come from a biblical standpoint, this is not political. At the end of the day, even whether we get our rights for property or not, the question here is for Christians. We don't even probably need to fight over that part. What we need to be looking at is like what Paul says.
Well, but I guess why wouldn't you? This goes back, and I forgot to make this point a couple weeks ago. I think out of stories, and this would really, if you were an Andy Stanley type person, this wouldn't matter. But like I asked, if you're Abraham and you're Lot and you're standing on whatever top of a mountain you're standing on, and Abraham goes, do you want to go to the south or to the north or to the east or to the west, whatever he said.
Right.
And he goes, and those will be your lands.
Yeah.
That indicates ownership.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I guess what I'm saying is at the end of the day, a Christian, whether we find out that our rights are here, no matter what we've done, even if we voted and done what we should do, if our rights are taken or they're kept, at the end of the day, this is what we live. We live for the Lord.
Right, but we have let everything go so badly that we used to do all of it simultaneously.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So what I'm trying to get at is that, like when Paul writes here in 1 Timothy chapter 4, which is interesting because I think I want to talk a little bit about some of this stuff. But he says, but the Spirit explicitly says that in latter times some will fall away from the faith, paying attention to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons, by means of the hypocrisy of liars seared in their own conscience as with a branding iron. I think people think this is political. I would tend
the Bible.
No, what's going on today?
Oh, okay.
I think it's more of more spiritual than what we understand. Matter of fact, Patrice Cullors said herself in the interview. She said, "No, Black Lives Matter at its roots is spiritual."
Yeah.
And even Marxism, it's
Right.
spiritual.
Right.
If he was as demonic as this new book that came out says, then that was a spiritual thing. And then it goes back to Ephesians chapter 6. We do not fight against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of the air and rulers in dark places. That's our fight. So as Christians then, I guess my thought is this: could we do more time on our knees praying than we are voicing our opinion against all these things? Because if you get the facts and you know how demonic this stuff is that's going on, Christians, instead of us protesting or whatever, or trying to fight for what, we should be on our knees praying, because this stuff is dark.
Well,
and it's changing
so
people.
It's exactly what you're saying right there. It's interesting that the left is the one that's always they're in the streets with signs and yelling and screaming like they're not working all day. And you don't see, like, you actually have to organize a conservative protest. Because I think...
And pick a day.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to pick a day, arrange buses, you have to,
Yeah.
and it's only been of modern times that I think you've seen the right or the conservative out in the street trying to get a message across, because I think it was understood as a with Judeo-Christian values, with understanding at least there's a God, with prayer, people praying. I think that people entertain their faith more seriously in times past, if I could say that. Let's just go with it. Let's say that's the case. We assumed that people it would figure itself out.
Yeah.
We didn't feel like we had to go hold up a sign and say something in a street.
Yeah.
That's really the point I'm trying to get at, is if we followed God's laws, followed his word, we went to work every day, we passed that on to our children and their children, the rest of that stuff's going to take care of itself.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
For better or for worse.
Right.
And now, since it's all so unhinged, and everybody feels like nobody's listening to them, and I've been off Facebook. Like it's like we were talking this morning. Everybody's made up their mind.
Yeah.
There isn't anybody who doesn't know who Donald Trump is. There isn't anybody who doesn't know, Joe Biden's a brain dead idiot, and it is just gonna be what it's gonna be.
Yeah, and no matter what you do, I think as a Christian, we need to remember that this idea of what we're fighting against we're not fighting against flesh and blood.
It's bigger than us.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And we're not going to fix it with fleshly, what do you call it? Resources. We need the resource of heaven if you're going to fix any of this stuff.
Right.
If you're going to fix the fact that 50% of, I think it may even be 75% of black families in inner cities have no father, right?
Right.
That's statistic. I think it's either 50 or 75%. If you're going to fix that, that's a spiritual issue.
Yeah.
And it's not just black. It's a spiritual issue in white homes as well.
Sure.
So no matter what it is, it's a spiritual issue. It's going to be big.
Well, I mean, it's the divorce, rampant. It's allowed. Abortion's cool.
Right. And you're not going to fix abortion.
No.
That's a spiritual issue. That's huge.
Right.
And you're not going to fix it with protesting outside.
No.
You're not.
No.
All right. So let's move on then. So literally, as an organization, listen, if there's anything we could say is do not back. If anything, pray against this stuff that's going on in the streets, because it's demonic, and it's clear that they've said it's demonic. They don't call it demons, but they call it spirits.
Yeah.
But it's demonic. So the second thing is the wildfires that are going on. If you look at a map on regular news, the entire West Coast is on fire. burning, over 100 different fires in a dozen different states. And Matt, you have, Corey, your wife, Corey, has family that lives out in Oregon.
Yep, family and friends out there.
What have you heard specifically from them? What's going on? Is there anything?
Other than, like, we get the nightly updates of where the fire's at or where the fires are. I think she knows some acquaintances that have lost homes because it literally is near the living areas. Like, out west is different in the sense that you don't have a city with then suburb sprawl all around it. Mm-hmm. Out there, a town is its houses and its downtown areas all together. So, you have little housing developments and stuff scattered here, there, and everywhere. And the fire has been lit, like, part of it's by malls and housing developments, other parts of it's like up in the mountains where people are up in mountain roads and valleys, and it's like a bunch of small fires.
Okay.
It's not like in California they have, fire wiping out millions of acres at one time.
Right.
Taking over a whole mountain.
Mm-hmm.
These are like smaller fires sweeping through the different areas, and so it's dangerous in that way, and they don't know. They've heard that it's arson. They've heard that it's not arson.
Yeah, I heard a report that someone said somebody started these fires.
So there was a report I read on this is going on in Washington and California and Oregon equally. They've caught a guy trying to light the median on fire in a town in Washington.
Okay.
And when this whole week started, if I could go slightly conspiratorial, Southern Oregon is different from Northern Oregon, and even like Eugene and Springfield in the middle of the state is like this hurricane eye of the storm mixing bowl, where Eugene, being a college town, is very liberal, very trendy, very worldly, and Springfield is like got the churches and the Southern idea. So from like Springfield and then east and down to the south of the state, they're very conservative. Mm-hmm. Very cowboy, old towny, like it's old west towns, right? And then Eugene north up into Portland is city liberal. That's where their mayor's from, which rules the place, and their governor, and you can follow their politics and see where that goes. And I said, it'd be interesting to see if Southern Oregon gets the fire protection that everyone else does.
Gotcha.
Because in the back of my mind, we also heard stories, especially in the one little town, Grants Pass, which is next to Medford, where we have friends. There was a rumor that there was going to be a big Antifa thing, and so like the whole town gathered up with their guns and their trucks. They were going to bring down the big flagpole in the center of town.
Oh, okay.
The whole town gathered up with their guns and trucks and went downtown, and they were like, "Okay, where are they?" And they never came.
Gotcha.
And there was supposed to be a big deal in Medford with Antifa and whatever, and so they load up in their trucks and their guns, and then no one ever comes.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, are we lighting Southern Oregon on fire to go, well, you're going to get some kind of destruction.
Yeah. Right.
But they seem to be, they're putting down the retardant. They have the helicopters flying water, and I think it's a crappy situation.
Right.
So, and we pray for them. So far, what did I read? 10% of Oregon's displaced. They would have you believe that Oregon's wiped off the map.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah. I think it's 10% of Oregon is displaced from their homes right now.
Okay.
From fire.
All right.
So, yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You figure 10% of a population. What do we have? 357 million people in the world.
No,
in the United States. In the United States, yeah. Sorry. And so
you so you go out by them. If you go out by the smaller western states, the populations are very much smaller. Like at one time when my parents went out to Montana, there was more people in downtown Cleveland than in the whole state of Montana.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
All right, so let me just throw this out at you. We're getting ready to start a new series on the second coming of Christ.
Okay.
And of course,
small topic.
Small topic. And of course, we are living in a day and age where now all the prophecy people are on YouTube. I mean, if you go on YouTube and look up prophecy now, you'll just find plethora of people on there having dreams and prophetic visions of the end of the world and what's going to happen and all this kind of stuff. And of course, you and I have talked about this in the past, and we don't know, obviously. There could be 1,000 years left. There could be, 10 hours left. We have no idea how long before the Lord comes back. But the question has always been in the Christian community that, certain people have an idea of how it's going to look and how it's going to shake down and what everything's going to be in the end times. And so as you get ready to do a good study, a good contextual hermeneutical study in the scripture text, which means that you take and you look at the text and you read it in context, but then you read it in the context of what the other authors have said and what the Old Testament prophets have said, and then you try to piece it all together. It's not as easy as some people make it look in the books that they've written. And when I say that, you might say, well, the reason it's easy is they've done all the hard work and they put it in the books. But even when you read their books, you find out that no, they had to twist that to make that work, and they had to go here in order to make that work, and that's not really a good thing. So I think as mankind, we really struggle. We want to know how it's going to shake down, but I think at the end of the day, none of us really knows how it's going to shake down.
No, exactly. And he says that we won't.
Well, yeah, he says we won't know when he's coming back. But then some people will say, but Jesus said, here are the signs.
Right.
And so some people think that they can tell the signs, and I don't even know that that's possible.
No, and I guess that's what I'm saying. But I know it's a deep subject.
Right.
There's a lot of rabbit trails we can go down.
Right. So I guess what I want to say real quick then, so with the fires going on out west, judgment of God or not, what's your thought?
I wouldn't want to comment.
Good. That's good. Because it would be almost, it would be totally foolish to comment, to say yes it is or no it's not, because
you could drive yourself insane doing that.
Yeah, you could. And there's people out there that are talking about the fires in the West being a sign of end times. And I'm going, then that means.
But that's even a different leap from. I could see if they said that it's a judgment on Oregon for being a bunch of liberal weirdos.
Well, I would rather say that.
I would rather say that than as a sign of the end times.
Yeah, but
that's two different things.
But you're right. But I couldn't even say that because ultimately
it would be a lot of fun. But no, I can't.
Right. But ultimately, fire, because you could look at like what's been going down in California with the new law on pedophilia. And how there could be a 10-year gap now between an individual who's an adult and an individual who's underaged.
Who came up with that law?
Oh, my goodness. So you could look at those kind of laws and go, okay, God's judging them. And he could be. But you can't say that for sure. Nobody can say that. But then to say that this is part of judgment coming with end time stuff and what's going to happen, well, I guess it could be, but you can't say that. So I've been doing a study in Old Testament and New Testament of the Day of the Lord, and we're going to talk about that this Sunday. We're going to talk about the Day of the Lord and what that looks like and what that means. But I was really taken aback to look and see how many of the old prophets, and I guess I knew this, but I really didn't hone in on it, but how many of the prophets talk about the Day of the Lord? Like sometimes you just think, well, that's just Ezekiel and Zechariah. But Amos talks about it. Joel talks about it, which Joel is quoted in Peter's sermon in Acts chapter 2. Zechariah talks about it. Ezekiel talks about it. Isaiah talks about it. And I want to say there's another Old Testament prophet where I found information on it. But they describe it in the ways that we're kind of seeing things going on today. So I guess the question is, the day of the Lord, could the day of the Lord be a time period of destruction and tribulation that comes, as well as the very day when he comes? Like, could it be together now? Like, everybody looks at the day of the Lord being, it's the day that God's going to show up and pour out his wrath on the entire world, and everybody's going to pay for their sin, and then we're going to have a new kingdom and a new earth. But could the day of the Lord be a time frame where God begins to pour out certain things on the earth in as a way of judgment? While he's doing that, though, what I noticed in Zechariah is there's a spirit of grace in that time period as well. And then all of a sudden he returns in an instant, in the blink of an eye, as the lightning flashes from the east to the west, so will the day he be in his day. And then when he returns on that day, there will be a final just boom culmination of the whole thing. But could it all be leading up? So I guess what I'm saying is, could this all be tribulation? Could this all be the day of the Lord, meaning judgment being poured out, but also ultimately...
Like since the temple was destroyed in 70 years.
Yeah, right. Right. Or even since the cross. Because if you look at the cross, after the cross, the disciples literally...
They believed they were in tribulation.
Yeah.
They were looking for it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And they actually suffered.
Right. So could tribulation have started at the cross?
Sure. I think you can make an argument for that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard to spend a lot of time making an argument for that, because there's a lot of material that you'd have to go through.
Yeah, no, it's impossible, because now you're the subject of books.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess
so you write a book. That's what you're saying.
Well, no, I'm not writing a book.
Is this? Are you announcing your background study and what do you look when you look for materials? Investigation.
Okay.
Into the subject of your first book.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that my first book was written about 12 years ago, and it's still in the first chapter in my computer somewhere.
How's your answer to white fragility going too, by the way?
Yeah, that's got first chapter done. I couldn't do it anymore.
Okay.
Because by the time I got through it, I'm like, man, by the time I write this, someone else will have already had their people write it and put their name on it, and it'd be done.
And it'd be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
So you picked a small subject. You're going to tell us about the end times.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Second coming of Jesus.
The second coming of Jesus.
Well, one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about today was that when Jesus returns, what I found was interesting is this, Matt, and I just wanted to get your thought on it. And it's in Zechariah, if I can find it. Zechariah, or maybe it's Ezekiel. Hold on. Let me see if I can throw my notes. You got anything before I do that?
Just that I think it's going to be a while.
Before he comes back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody,
most Christians you talk to say it can't be long. It's got to be.
Well, yeah,
it's
no, and that's why I'm throwing the football the other way.
Okay.
I'm going, you know what? It's not here yet.
So you're just choosing to, like when they say black, you're going to say white.
I've always been that way.
Okay. All right.
But I don't just do it thoughtlessly.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't just do it thoughtlessly, like, I keep going back to the argument that the people who lived during the Dark Ages, who were being disemboweled for speaking up against the king,
right?
Their money was just being taken from them by robbers. There was the Black Plague. There was no soap. I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah. I think.
Is there no soap in some other countries? Or do some people just have stronger body odor than others? And I know that's going to sound.
Good question.
I know that's going to sound racist, or no, not racist. It's going to sound.
It could be racist.
Derogatory.
Yeah. No.
But I'm just asking the question.
I think it's a good question. I don't really know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I thank God every day that we have it.
Yeah.
And
maybe it's just a cultural thing.
It could be.
Because I just found out a couple years ago, maybe, that it's actually not good to wash your hair every day. It's not good for your hair to wash it every day.
Yeah, that's hippie speak.
Really?
Yeah, that's like eating organic.
All right, because I've always washed my hair every day.
Like if I eat a human being, I'm eating organic.
Okay.
Okay.
You are, actually. Yeah, that's true.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
what if you eat a vegan person? Are you still vegan? If you eat a vegan person, would you be vegan?
No, because cows are vegan, but people who don't eat meat don't eat cows.
That's true. Okay. All right.
See, I feel like this is why the country doesn't work anymore. I have to explain these very simple subjects when the difficult ones everyone used to understand.
That's so funny.
So anyway, in the Dark Ages, those people, if there ever was a group who thought that the end must, they were watching the Crusades, like they're watching people ride off to the Middle East and kill everybody they could possibly kill,
right,
and then come back,
right.
Would that not look like Revelation? Now, granted, they couldn't read the Bible yet. We hadn't had the Reformation. But would that not look like Revelation with the armies fighting all over the world?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the Dark Ages, 1300s, the 1500s, or 1200s, the 1500s. I mean, that had to be pretty horrific. That had to look like the end times.
Right. And Mike Heiser, I've talked about him before, but he's a scholar and Bible guy, Bible nerd or whatever. But one of the things that he talks about is this already and not yet concept. I always talk about it as dual references, meaning you're referencing something that's happening now, but something that's also going to happen in the future. He calls it an already and not yet, meaning that you have something that's already here, it's taking place, but yet there's still a part of that that's going to take place in the future.
Okay.
And I think that's really important. I have to find mine. I have to get my computer. I know that's unprofessional.
No, you're fine, because I've been digging in my eye, and I stroke my beard, so...
Well, I know that we're not professional anyway, but I just had to pull this up because...
One thing, while we're doing this, the live chat is not available on YouTube.
Why?
It says because something about children content.
Oh, you have to mark it. When you post it, you have to mark that it's okay for children.
Oh, Judas. That's not done every time?
It's a new thing on YouTube now. We could set it that every video we put is good for children. But if we do a video and it's not good for children,
meanwhile, Netflix is allowed to put child porn on their platform.
Right.
Okay.
But if we Same.
Yeah.
That's cool. Maybe I'll make them tall.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. We should be back.
All right. I think we're back, Bob. Sorry about that. We lost audio.
Our computer glitched out here.
Let me see. That's cool. Yep, we're back. All right, we got audio now. So, real quick, it was Zechariah chapter 12. I was looking in 14, but it was in 12. So this is the idea of Jerusalem getting ready to be attacked as part of the day of the Lord. And it keeps saying, in that day, which tells me it's the day of the Lord, but it's not necessarily just one day.
Right.
It might be a time period of when this stuff is happening. So this is what's interesting. Let's see. Now I probably won't be able to find it. So he says, I will pour out on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, so that they will look on me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son, and they will weep bitterly over him like the bitter weeping over a firstborn. So when we look at that, that's also in Revelation. But when you look at that, I always thought to myself, so what's going to happen is Jesus is going to show up, and they're all going to be weeping and crying because they're going to be like, oh my goodness, I missed it, and he's going to strike them all dead. But it appears to me now, as I read this in the context of Zechariah, I will pour out on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem, not annihilation or destruction, I will pour out the spirit of grace and of supplication, so that they will look on me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for the only son, and they will weep bitterly over him like the bitter weeping over the firstborn. And in that day there will be great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning of Hadadrimmon in the plain of Megiddo. And the land will mourn, every family by itself, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves. And it continues to say, every family will mourn by themselves. And then it says, in that day, chapter 13, a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for impurity. And it will come about in that day, declares the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols. It's like a restoration. Yeah. And in that restoration, there's a spirit of grace that's going to come down, not just destruction.
Okay.
So we have for years looked at this and gone, when Jesus shows up, man, everything's getting annihilated. And yet there in Zechariah, there's this concept of a spirit of grace that's going to be poured out so that people might have a spirit of supplication. So they might actually call out and find grace maybe in that time.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
I mean,
and I'm not being a universalist saying that everybody's going to be saved, but it seems
no, because there's already dead people.
Right. But it seems like God is always, no matter what is happening, even when he's bringing judgment, he's always going, there's an open door somewhere. You could find me if you want. Even in this destruction, you could find me here. The spirit of grace.
Which would prove his love for us.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept. And it's different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I think everybody does have that idea that no matter how you slice it, there's going to be this really shabby time, and then he's going to come back, and there's going to be a gigantic war where evil is conquered,
right,
and people are judged, and then new heaven and new earth.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, there's a lot of Christians waiting. They're going, come down and kill them.
Let's get it. Yeah.
Matter of fact, start with Biden and DeWine.
Let's do it
Just
now.
Do it.
Yeah.
That's what people are.
Are
thinking, right?
Yeah. I agree.
And what if he shows up and people like people that are involved in Black Lives Matter, he shows up and some of them mourn and cry out and go, would he save them? Because that was Jonah's problem.
Right.
Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh.
Right.
Because he's like, you'll forgive them.
Right. And I don't want you to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's what we tend to do.
So the day of the Lord is just in my head now. I'm going, I've read so many
books. So is the day of the Lord for the past 2,000 years then?
Well, that's my question. Has the day of the Lord in a way been happening? Okay, so here's what so
you're combining. So you're preterism.
Maybe.
Right.
But not preterism as preterism, because
right. No, it's a different spin.
It is.
But it would put you in their time frame.
So let me read to you what we're going to look at Sunday morning. I'll just read and just tell me if this doesn't sound kind.
And you said we're not allowed to say preterism.
No, we can. You can say it.
Okay.
We're
not going to talk about it.
We won't understand it. Because you'd have to read a preterist book, and by the time you read a preterist book, you'd have to say, I agree or disagree.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you haven't...
Like Calvinism and Arminianism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you really haven't looked at the scriptures
No,
as a whole.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So Luke chapter 17, verse 22, and he said to his disciples, the days will come when you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. And they will say to you, look there, look here, do not go away, and do not run after them. For just like the lightning, when it flashes out of one of the parts of the sky, shines other part of the sky, so will the Son of Man be in his day. So that's when he comes. So in his day, it'll be quick, he'll come. But, verse 25, but first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. And just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. Okay, so there's a day, but then it's the days of the Son of Man. And so then he goes on to say they were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And the flood came and destroyed them all. And it was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating and they were drinking and they were buying and they were selling and they were planting and they were building. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. 30. It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, the one who is on the housetop and whose goods are in the house must not go down to take them out. And likewise, the one who is in the field must not turn back. Remember Lot's wife, verse 32. Verse 33, whoever seeks to keep his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it. I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed. One will be taken and the other will be left. There will be two women grinding at the same place, and one will be taken and the other will be left. Verse 36 is not in the oldest manuscripts, but some people believe that Luke borrowed it from Matthew, or a scribe put it into Luke later on because they read Matthew and they said, oh, Matthew wrote this, so we should have this in Luke.
Okay.
Two men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other will be left. And then it says in verse 37, and answering they said to him, where, Lord, where? And he said to them, where the body is, there also the vultures will be gathered together. Now, verse 37, the idea of the vultures, if you go to Revelation 19, you will find out that in the great marriage feast, the supper of the Lord, the valley of Jehoshaphat, when all the armies come together and the Son of Man comes back, and with a sword out of his mouth, he destroys all of them. In that text in Revelation, he's calling for the birds of the air to come feast on the flesh of horses and men, because he'll kill them. So I think that's where he's talking. That's where the valley of Jehoshaphat, and that would be in Revelation 19. But if you look at this appears to happen in a day or an instant, but it also seems to look like it's dragging out over some time period.
Yeah, well, all right. So when you're saying you're in a field, that's an instant. Mm-hmm. I mean, at best, it'd be a couple hours.
Yeah, right.
And same thing with the examples he used were showing instances, not like you'll be working amongst your coworkers day in, day out for years and years until your retirement,
right? And
one will be missing, and you'll still be there,
right?
There were instances. So I think that's why it's always been thought that it's going to be a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I see what you're saying. I get, why couldn't those individual instances be spread out? So 100 years ago, they were talking about the two in the field. And 100 years later, they were talking about the guy on the roof not going in and getting your belongings. And another instant, these instances could be spread out over time.
Yeah.
That was their decisions.
Right.
Basically, it was saying, don't make a poor decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because if you think about where they talk about as like Lot's wife, remember Lot's wife?
Yep.
That was an instant and that was a decision.
Right.
Don't make a poor decision.
Yeah.
Is what it's saying.
And she was heading out of town.
Right.
She was getting out of Dodge, but she looked back.
Right.
So remember that.
She wanted her crap, and she had to have it, and she is now a Salt Lick.
Right. Yeah, she is. And if you go to Luke chapter 21, which I think is really the main point of why Jesus even told them about his return, is he says in verse 34 of Luke 21, be on guard so that your hearts will not be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life, and that day will not come on you suddenly like a trap. So if you're not letting your heart be weighed down by the dissipation and the worries of life and the stuff of this life.
Well, and when it says that day, when that day comes, that doesn't mean that it is a day for everyone.
Right.
It's a day for you
Yeah.
to decide. It's the day you decide.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. And at the same time,
Well, that helps fit your expanded timeline.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, if you can see how one can read that and they boil it down to an instant for everyone. But if you want to go this other route, you have to say it's your instant that you're deciding for your life that day.
Right. And in the Old Testament, and even here, it talks about the day of the Lord is coming. The day of the Lord is near. And in the writers in Paul, like the epistles, they talk about it's near, almost like it's right around the corner. It's coming. And people today are going.
I've heard that said.
Yeah.
I've heard that said that the apostles and the disciples, everybody back then was expecting Jesus to be back.
Right. Right.
They thought that the time was near.
Yeah.
So that's always been my argument for like, well, how can you say today is the day?
Right.
We've been thinking this for 2,000 years.
Right. Yeah, and so then, obviously in the weeks to come, we're going to get into the whole Antichrist thing, because Paul says in Thessalonians that, listen, if you get a letter from us or that's supposedly
this is the IRS.
Yeah, and or a spirit comes to you telling you that the day of the Lord has already come, don't believe it, because the day of the Lord can't come until the apostasy comes first and the man of lawlessness sets himself up as God in the temple. So Paul gives specific things about what needs to happen before the actual day of the Lord. So
we're going to need a temple.
Yeah. Well, maybe. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks.
These are things to come.
Yeah. Because, maybe we will need a temple.
So are you trying to tell me that we've been trying to find a
red heifer
for no good reason?
I don't know. Maybe.
You're going to make a lot of people disappointed. I mean, they've been trying to cultivate this red heifer for years.
I know.
That's crazy.
It's so much fun, though, to look at, every time you look at the scriptures, every time you look at a theology point, is to look at it with fresh eyes. I think it's so important that people read books and they get an idea and they go, wow, I really like that. I like that that's what that verse means.
Right.
So you know what? I'm holding on to that no matter what. I think every time you read, you should look with a fresh set of eyes and try to go, okay, did I miss something here? Is this really what's going on? And I think for end times, you really have to do that.
Right.
I think it helps you to be prepared and be on your
guard. As long as you're not blasphemous.
Yeah, right.
No, it's cool. I think it's fun because, those people, the preterists, they have to get their theology from somewhere.
Right.
R.C. Sproul was a preterist, and I wouldn't consider him a dumb individual.
No, not at all.
He had to develop that from somewhere.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know how it came about. And so once you start hearing of big names like that, thinking that way, you start to go, well, what in the world would make them think that?
Yeah.
And that's another way to go, okay, let's retake a look at this.
Right.
And what you're saying would fit. It would make sense. Like, I could see that being a thing. It's just not what my grandma said.
No. Not what anybody I know says.
Not my grandma said.
Because we just, we're going to be out of here, according to most people. We'll be raptured out. And then everybody's going to figure out a way to have some peace and go, it's okay, everybody. We got someone who can lead us. And then they're going to take the mark, and then there's going to be this peace treaty that's going to be broken, and then all hell's going to break loose with all kind of tribulation stuff, meaning people are going to be tormented in different ways, and they'll try to find death, but they won't be able to get it. They won't be able to grab it. They'll want to die, but they can't. And so you take all those things out of Revelation.
Those are the things I'm waiting to see happen, by the way.
Yeah, well, you won't get to see them if you raptured out, though.
I don't think I'm going to be raptured out.
Okay.
So I've been preparing my soul to want to pull the rocks of the mountains on top of me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is, Christians go, I don't want to be in that time. Well, if you were in that time, think about it. The locusts or the locusts that have like heads of lions and tails like scorpion that are sent out. They're sent out to torment the people who've taken the mark.
Right.
Well, if you didn't take the mark,
well,
then
don't
you don't
take
have to
the
worry
mark.
about. You don't have to worry about that.
Even Glenn Beck, our favorite Mormon, he brought that up this week.
Oh, did he?
And he brought up the point that I think he may be more. I think he may be swinging less out of Mormonism. I think he may be reading the Bible a little too much, the actual Bible.
Oh, okay.
Because I think sometimes he makes some sense.
Well, he has talked to John MacArthur lately, hasn't he? Didn't he have an interview with MacArthur or something over this whole quarantine thing? And them
I don't remember that.
I thought he did have an interview.
Oh, maybe he did.
You have to double check.
I'll double check for you. But he said this week, it may not be a physical mark, but what if it's the idea that you're thinking evil, you're thinking Satan, you're thinking the evil in your mind, and you're doing his work with your hands.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's kind of observant. Like,
it goes back to that thought that we were talking about, I don't know, maybe months ago, and it's like a world system.
Right. You're participating in this. You've chose to worship the God of man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would go back to Luke 21, where he says, "Don't let your so your hearts will not be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life, and that day will not come suddenly upon you like a trap."
Right. Yeah. And you would have to decide. I mean, you would have to. All right, and I think these decisions can be made, and I keep trying to bring this subject up. I don't know why it's subconsciously keep coming up, but we were watching Matt Walsh, and everybody went on a tear because
you and your children.
No, me and my wife. Oh. I think that everybody was kind of just trying to stay away from Trump yesterday, and so. Everybody went on a tear about this cutie show on Netflix, which is basically child pornography. And Matt Walsh was like,
"What's it called? Cuties?"
Cuties. Yeah. And so, and basically, it's about 11-year-old dancers, but like like you would take your kids to a dance competition.
But they're probably half dressed. But they're probably half dressed, right?
I hear there's some pretty horrible things. So anyway. They're railing against this, and he's like, if there's ever was a time to cancel your Netflix, now is it. And I've been thinking about getting rid of Netflix anyway, because we don't really watch a whole lot. But then my wife's like, well, there's 2 shows on there that the kids really like. And I'm like, I know, but don't you think that we should like
find them on Hulu or
get rid of this?
Yeah.
But she's looked around. She can't find them.
She can't find them.
No, because we've talked about this, getting rid of Netflix.
Are they out in DVD? You could buy like the whole series.
No, they're Netflix originals.
Oh.
Yeah. But where are we going to? Where are we? Is this a moment where I'm choosing to stand with man?
Right.
Because I want these 2 shows.
Right.
Or am I going to stand with God and go, I am not going to buy your filth?
Yeah.
But then once we go down that road, there's not a whole lot that I probably should be subscribing to.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, these are our judgments. These are the decisions that we have to make.
Well, April wanted to boycott Starbucks because
that's fine. You could drink coffee without
because
Starbucks.
when we go into Starbucks, they would have like the rainbow stuff all over the place.
Yes.
So she wanted to boycott that.
Right.
And no, I'm sorry. No, that's not it. She heard that the owner of Starbucks. I won't be able to remember. Something about the owner of Starbucks. He supported something or did something. And I looked at her and I go, listen, if you're not going to boycott them because they have a siren as their logo,
a siren,
and you're not going to boycott them for the purpose of some of the other things that they do, then don't boycott them now. Right. Especially when I like their coffee fraps.
No, see, this is good. You did just what I did. You justified away what you needed out of that subject. No, this is good. I'm glad that the pastor is in the same place I am because I secretly didn't get rid of Netflix. So,
well, we did cancel Netflix, but for other purposes, we just couldn't see us having it. And there are some nasty stuff on there, but
there is.
Yeah, we got Friendly though. Have you tried Friendly?
No, we got Minnow.
Minnow.
It's for smaller kids.
Oh, okay.
It's got Bible Man.
Oh.
It has Bible Man. It has a lot of Christian shows.
Bible man.
Yeah, it has VeggieTales.
Okay.
It's got all the VeggieTales.
What about Angel Wars? Does it have Angel Wars?
I think it might.
Really?
I think it might.
Wow.
That sounds familiar.
Because your nephews and nieces, we gave our DVDs of Angel Wars to them.
Okay.
And April, since the boys aren't going to watch them anymore, she's like, "Oh, you guys can just keep them." They're like, "What? We love these." And it's literally, I'm pretty sure it's Catholics that are putting, Catholic denomination,
right,
people that are putting this out.
Right.
They're great though.
Right.
I mean, these angels fighting the wars that humans don't really know that's going on.
Well, no, listen. All right. So, on the subject of dirty Catholics, I feel like there was a time,
as opposed to dirty Nazarenes.
Well, I don't know any dirty Nazarenes. Are there dirty Nazarenes?
Oh, there are dirty Nazarenes.
I'll take your word for it.
All right.
I feel that Catholicism has a major contribution to the Christian church, and allowed man to ruin it.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
I think you can still find Catholics that are really strong in faith after Jesus. The problem is that some of them have to compromise, like their Starbucks and their Netflix.
Well, the part that they really get hung up on is the Mary thing, and that's where I really get lost.
Yeah, but have you, like, I've known some Catholics that are like, well, I'm not big into the Mary thing.
No, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Listen, there are. That's how my mom got saved extra Catholically, and was part of a saved group that participated in Catholicism for a long time before we decided to go all crazy and go over to the Assemblies of God.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there is a new form of Catholicism now. It's called born-again Catholics. Have you seen that?
No.
It's been going on for a few years now, maybe even more than a few years. But Francis Chan has kind of gotten on that bandwagon, too, with the Catholicism. And
Okay.
he's actually having discussions now with Hank Hanegraaff, of all people. Are you a Hank Hanegraaff Bible answer man?
Ooh.
Because MacArthur doesn't like him either.
No, they've had some back and forth.
Because he just went over to the Orthodox, yeah.
Yes.
Greek Orthodox Church
Yes.
or something like that, yeah, and did the whole ceremony thing.
No, listen, if you
It's
want
strange.
some more inter-church, interfaith showdownmanship, look up the YouTubes of John MacArthur v. Hank Hanegraaff going back and forth.
Yeah.
After he made that, that's some good watching.
Right.
Yeah.
But Francis Chan, I mean, I appreciate Chan because he's always like, I'm just trying to figure out this. I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. The problem I have is though
He's like a Christian secret agent.
Kinda.
Trying to go into the Amish church.
Kinda.
Yeah.
But what's strange about Francis Chan though lately, and I think he's going down the wrong road, is that he has totally, well, I shouldn't say he is totally, maybe John MacArthur, because he came out of the Grace for You movement stuff.
Okay.
He was a big John MacArthur. Matter of fact, I think he graduated from Master's Seminary.
Okay.
So he was kind of in that vein. But now he's been dabbling in more charismatic stuff and different things. And so he started to associate himself with people of that brand. And now he's kind of going down the Catholicism road. And he's having discussions with people. And I would have to research this, and this would be a topic for another day. But he's talking to Hank Hanegraaff and some other guy about, you can find it on YouTube, about whether or not for years that the church, the actual church, not the Catholic Church, but the church believed that when they took communion, it was literally the body and the blood of Jesus. And it had spiritual ramifications when you took it.
Yeah.
And he's looking at...
No, that's why that's why it is, yeah. They call it...
transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation, yeah. And so these are the reasons why I think you run away from the Catholic Church.
But he's running to it.
He's running to it.
Well, I shouldn't say he's running to it. He's trying to make
so
it.
that's where Hank Hanegraaff, those are some of the things that won Hank Hanegraaff over were some of those arguments. And where he was getting in an argument with John MacArthur about the actual works, doing works, rather than being saved by faith and grace alone, right?
Right.
And so that was their battle. And Hank Hanegraaff was trying to make the argument, of course you're going to have to do something, which is, I think, the easy trap, right? Mm-hmm. If you start to think that it's something that you can do,
right,
then you're going to say, well, yeah, of course I'm going to have to do something.
Yeah.
Well, you'll do something, but you'll do something with Christ in you.
Yeah, right.
Right, and so that's where that falls apart pretty easy. Yeah. But you're saying Francis Chan was going down the communion.
Yeah, well, he's trying to feel it out and see if, because he said, he's researched some of the stuff, and he's like, yeah, the early church fathers actually believed this too before the Catholic Church ever called it transubstantiation. They believed that this had some kind of power. And I, to be honest, I kind of feel for Chan a little bit, because John Wesley used to take communion every day, at least from what I've read, that he took communion every day on his own by himself. And he believed there was a grace, some kind of a grace that came when you remembered the death of God, of Christ.
Which, that's not crazy.
It's not, but it's teetering.
That's Jesus. I mean, Jesus was saying that
at
the Last Supper.
Now, I don't think Wesley ever said he believed it was the body and the blood, the actual body and blood, but he did say there was some kind of grace that came
listen,
through.
So one of the things that, and this all comes down to the motivation of the heart. If that became just a religious event for him every day, mm-hmm. then that almost would be like a false god.
Right.
Like there's a lot of different judgment calls that
right.
I'm glad that we don't have to make.
Right.
As far as how we operate down here, because when you start to do it every day, you could start to question, like, are you doing that for your benefit then?
Right. I hear what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I give $1,000 every week to the church because I know it's going to come back to me.
Yeah, right.
It's that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where God judges our hearts.
Yeah.
Because it'd be very easy for me to stand on the other side of the room and go, you're just doing that for you.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly right. So it's probably about time to get out of here. But next week, if you want to tell your friends, the two of you that have been watching today.
There's been 2 on YouTube.
Okay.
And 2 or 3 on Facebook. Now, I made a comment. We have our old faithful friend, Ron Duncan, who said that you were very handsome.
Yeah.
And so I commented. I said, well, Ron, you're a cutie.
Oh.
But I didn't realize that.
Netflix.
That's a whole other layer of onion.
Okay.
But it's because it's on this computer. It went out there as you.
Oh, Northeast Community said it?
So I deleted it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I, we have those were our, and your brother said, it's getting old, Ron.
It never gets old.
No, it never gets old.
That someone compliments my beauty.
We actually sit here and giggle every time that it appears.
Yeah.
So.
And here's the thing, I really think that if I was born a female, I'd be very pretty.
Yeah. That'll be next week's topic.
Yes. Actually, next week, if you tell your friends, next week we're going to try and jump into some Holy Spirit stuff, talk about the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the Father, and the whole Trinity thing. We're going to try to nail some of that down and get some ideas and thoughts.
You really are. You're liking these little small subjects.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You're liking these things that you can easily, bite-sized morsels, as it were.
And we can just take enough out to go, those guys have no idea what they're talking about, and then move on.
They truly are uneducated.
They are. But I think we found some. Good truth today, in different places. We said that you can't judge the wildfires as end time stuff.
No.
We said that there could be a day. There is definitely a day coming, but there could be days of the Lord right now happening with judgment coming. But then that day looks like it's going to be restorative and not just destructive.
I think where I'm at is, don't sit in your easy chair eating Nutty Buddies, watching Maury Povich, looking out your window thinking it's going to come right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just waiting for Jesus.
Yeah.
With my Nutty Buddy and my Maury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Get out there and share the word of God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. So, and we might talk about some giants next week too. We'll see where we're at. Because I've seen some tall people lately.
A little Nephilim.
Nordic.
Nordic
people.
Speaking of the Nordsmen.
Yeah. Are they from Sweden?
Norway.
Huh? Oh, Norway. Yeah.
They, the president of Norway wants to nominate Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I heard that.
And he actually went as far to say, why wouldn't I? He's done more for peace than the other people who've been nominated for a few years.
Wow.
That was pretty good.
So
of course, he's a racist. I mean, it is what it is.
Who, Trump is?
No, the Nordsman.
Oh, he is.
The Nordish president.
Of course he is.
Yeah, obviously.
Blonde-haired, blue-eyed people.
Good grief.
Yeah.
He's from the mountains.
Yeah, they're definitely...
Yeah, they're sick. Yeah.
So, do you think then if he's done that, if he's nominated, does everybody from Norway, is that who nominates the Nobel Peace Prize?
No, world leaders get together and throw names out there.
Gotcha. So I'm wondering if he did that because possibly Donald Trump is Nordic himself, and we just don't know it.
He's a Scotsman.
You think?
That's what I've heard. That's what I heard from that guy who was going on and on about it.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, his family's Scottish.
Yeah, and we don't need to belabor this anymore because it's about time to get out of here. But, you know, something I found, and again...
And he's a Presbyterian.
He is a Presbyterian?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good. Presbyterian USA or Presbyterian, like, old school?
I didn't know there was different factions of
Oh, my
Presbyterians.
goodness, there is.
Oh, my. Okay.
There's all kinds of Presbyterians out there. There's even a sect inside the Presbyterian church because when the Presbyterian decided they were going to ordain homosexuals, they stayed within
the traditional Presbyterian.
They stayed within the Presbyterians, but they kind of branched off and they said, "No, we're not going to do this. We're not going to ordain homosexuals." And I don't know how long they were allowed to stay in, or even if they're still in there, they might be someone else now, something different. But that was like, oh my goodness, that was like 20 years ago. I remember talking about that. Anyway, so we need to get out of here. But I think too that as Christians, it's really important that we can speak truth, and we need to expose what is evil. Paul tells Timothy that, I think it's in Paul's writings to Timothy, that we even need to expose the evil that's going on. I think that's important, whether it's the demonic stuff that's going on in the streets, whether it's pedophilia, whatever it is, we need to expose that stuff, and we need to stand up for the justice of others. Whether it's police brutality, we need to stand up and expose it and stand for justice. But I think the way we do it is so important, and the reason I say that is because I was looking for statues because I was reading in Nebuchadnezzar, looking at end time stuff, Nebuchadnezzar's statue of himself. And looking at someone, I read a thing somewhere that someone said that the height of the statue and stuff came out to be 6'6" or something. So I looked it up and I'm like, no, it's 90 feet tall and all that. So that didn't work out. But when I looked at it, I was like, it was plated and all this stuff. So when I looked up statues, I saw a thing that back in 2000 and maybe 16 or 17, literally somebody made a naked statue of Donald Trump, put it in New York Square. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay, it stood there for several days until somebody finally, just busted it down, like knocked it down. Somebody vandalized it.
Was it big?
It was large. It was human size. It was of him standing there naked, and of course it made him look very obese in his body, And then it had all these blue veins coming through it, and then his private parts were there, and it was just, and so people were standing there, like, pointing out the private parts and that kind of stuff, and they were taking pictures, and it was if this was okay. Like, to make fun of somebody like that was okay on that end. Like, it was okay not only to make fun, but then to make fun in an immoral way even. And I
don't know why it's a shocker, though.
Oh, my goodness. It was a shocker to me because I'm like, there was black ladies standing there making gestures in fun of it as if it was... And older black ladies and white people, and I mean, it was just not black ladies.
If you're not in with the crew, it's okay.
Yeah, and I couldn't even believe it was ladies. And I'm not saying black, because there were white people there too, and there might have been some white ladies.
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
But yeah. I guess when I saw an older, when I think of an older black lady, I think of a lady who loves Jesus, because I guess that's what I've always, when I first got saved, April and I went to a church in Warren, because we were just checking out different churches, and we went to a church in Warren, and they were all black. It was a all black church, and we were the only two white people in there.
And those black ladies were just praising Jesus and all that stuff, and they treated us nice. They come up to us and were talking to us and all that stuff. So I guess for some reason in my head, I had this idea that all older black ladies loved Jesus and were conservative in the sense that they were moral. They didn't do stuff like that.
Right.
And when I saw this older black lady making this gesture, I was just like flabbergasted. I was dumbfounded. And it's not because she was black. It was just in my head. It was like, oh my goodness. But it was all the pictures and all the people
Right.
that it was just like, as Christians, and obviously they weren't Christians, but as Christians, we need to make sure that no matter who we're talking about, whether it's Biden or Trump or who it is, that we're doing it in a way. Yes, you can reveal truth, but I think you need to respect the people. You can't be doing stupid stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's terrible.
But when, like I said, this is where it seems to be where we are. Is everything is fair if you are not of the accepted class. Nobody's thinking in regards to being fair, even though this is being done in the name of being fair and being just and being immoral. It's a new morality.
Yeah.
It's a new fairness.
Right.
And it's a new, which is evil. It's good is evil and evil is good.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And so we are seeing that, and it's rearing its ugly head. And so, as Christians, we need to pray. We need to seek the Lord's face now, because I'm not saying it's only going to get worse, but it's going down that road. And unless you and I get on our knees and begin to pray and fight against the spiritual warfare that's going on, the enemy's going to continue to.
It's not going to stop.
Yeah, he's just going to.
It's not going to let it. We can win this election, and we'll have to worry about something else in 4 more years.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I'm at. It's like me personally, my opinion, would like to see Donald Trump elected for 4 more years, but that's only 4 more years. My kids hopefully are going to be around a little longer than that.
Right.
If I'm not.
Right.
And you know that this is a temporary solution.
Yeah.
And it's okay to go, and this is where I was saying earlier about doing these things simultaneously. If as long as you're rooted in that, you're in your vehicle.
Right.
You have your weapons. You have your spiritual weapons.
Right.
Because the road that you're on
Right.
is this 4 years and that 2 years and that happened yesterday and this is going to be my tomorrow.
Right.
You know, you need your armor of God.
Yeah.
So.
Right. No, I agree 100%.
All right.
So
we done?
Yeah, this has been Uneducated, and hopefully you've thought about some things rationally and logically today, and hopefully you keep thinking about those things. So have a great week. If you don't have a local church to go to, we are here on Sundays at 11 o'clock, and we also do a little devotion on Tuesdays, so online. So join us and get some good stuff in your head to think about.
Right on. Have a good week.
And weekend.